The Pacific, 1942, Japan's Zero fighter reigned supreme. It danced through the skies with impossible agility, tearing apart Allied planes and striking terror into every pilot who faced it. For a year, the Allies bled, losing men and machines to an enemy they could not match. But then, a new shape appeared above the jungles of New Guinea. A twin-boomed predator with speed, range, and firepower beyond imagination. Its name, the P-38 Lightning. And with it, the age of Japanese dominance was about to end in flames. In the months following Pearl Harbor, the Pacific skies belonged almost entirely to Japan. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero, light, agile, and with extraordinary range, carved its legend from the Philippines to the jungles of New Guinea. Against it, American and Allied pilots found themselves at a severe disadvantage. Fighters like the P-39 Airacobra and the P-40 Warhawk could not match the Zero in tight-turning combat. Once drawn into a dogfight, many U.S. pilots knew the outcome was already decided. The statistics were grim. In the first year of the war, squadrons of the U.S. Army Air Forces and the Navy lost aircraft and men at alarming rates. Many young aviators went into battle with only a few dozen hours of training, facing Japanese veterans who had been honing their skills in China since the late 1930s. The Zero's dominance was not just technical, it was psychological. Allied flyers spoke of it with dread, convinced that no American machine could ever rival it in the air. Strategically, this imbalance was dangerous. Without control of the skies, Allied operations across the Solomon Islands, New Guinea, and the Central Pacific were constantly threatened. Bombers lacked escorts capable of defending them on long missions, and transport routes were exposed to attack. Commanders in Washington and Pearl Harbor knew that victory in the Pacific would demand more than courage. It would require a fighter that could not only survive against the Zero, but turn the tables entirely. By late 1942, that answer was on its way. From Lockheed's assembly lines in California came a radical new design, one that broke with tradition and promised to rewrite the rules of aerial combat. The P-38 Lightning was about to make its debut. The story of the P-38 Lightning began in 1937, when the U.S. Army Air Corps issued a bold requirement: a high-altitude interceptor capable of 360 miles per hour, climbing to 20,000 feet in just 6 minutes. Most manufacturers answered with conventional single-engine designs, but Lockheed, under the direction of the brilliant engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson, proposed something revolutionary: a twin-engine fighter with a central cockpit pod and 2 long booms carrying the engines and tail. This radical layout was not simply for show. By using twin Allison Farr 1710 engines, each equipped with turbo superchargers, the aircraft could maintain power at altitudes where other fighters struggled for breath. The wide stance of the booms gave it stability, while concentrating all its weapons, 120mm cannon and 4.50 caliber machine guns, directly in the nose allowed for devastatingly accurate fire. Unlike wing-mounted guns, which converged at a set distance, the Lightning's weapons delivered a dense, straight stream of firepower at any range. From its first flight in 1939, the P-38 shattered expectations. It reached speeds over 400 miles per hour, climbed with astonishing vigor, and possessed a combat range that far surpassed most contemporaries. Pilots were initially wary of its size and complexity, but test flights revealed an aircraft with extraordinary potential. As war erupted in Europe and the Pacific, the Lightning quickly transitioned from prototype to production. Early models saw service with reconnaissance units and in limited combat, but it was in the vast distances of the Pacific that the aircraft's true value became clear. With its speed, altitude, and range, the P-38 was perfectly suited to the challenges of the theater. By late 1942, the twin-boom fighter was ready to face its ultimate test against the vaunted Zero. When the P-38 Lightning first encountered the Mitsubishi A6M Zero, the contrast between the two machines could not have been more striking. On paper, they represented two entirely different philosophies of fighter design, one rooted in agility and minimal weight, the other in power, protection, and versatility. The Zero was the product of Japan's pre-war doctrine: build the lightest possible fighter with unmatched maneuverability. Stripped of heavy armor and self-sealing fuel tanks, it was extraordinarily agile. It could outturn almost anything in the sky, climbing and rolling with a grace that stunned Allied pilots in the early battles of 1941 and 1942. Its endurance was equally impressive. With drop tanks, the A6M could escort bombers on missions exceeding 1,500 miles, giving Japan the reach it needed across the Pacific. But this performance came at a deadly cost. Without armor or fuel protection, even a short burst of machine gun fire could ignite the Zero like a torch. The P-38 Lightning was built on a very different premise. Powered by two turbo-supercharged Allison engines, it could climb above 30,000 feet while maintaining strong performance, a realm where the Zero's carbureted engine gasped for power. Its maximum speed exceeded 400 miles per hour, nearly 100 miles faster than the Zero in level flight. The Lightning's dive performance was in another league entirely. It could plunge at speeds the Zero simply could not follow. Its wings and structure strong enough to withstand forces that would tear the Japanese fighter apart. Armament highlighted another stark difference. The Zero's mixed battery, two 7.7mm machine guns and two 20mm cannon, was effective in close combat, but the spread of wing-mounted guns meant accuracy dropped sharply at distance. By contrast, the P-38 concentrated all its weapons in the nose: four heavy .50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon. This configuration allowed American pilots to strike from hundreds of yards away with pinpoint precision, often destroying enemies before they could even react. Finally, there was survivability. The Lightning's armor, redundant engines, and self-sealing fuel tanks meant a pilot had a fighting chance of bringing his machine home, even when badly damaged. For Zero pilots, a single hit could be fatal. The result was a duel between two extremes. The nimble but fragile Zero, optimized for a quick war Japan hoped to win, against the fast, heavily armed Lightning, an aircraft designed for endurance, adaptability, and survival. In the skies of the Pacific, that difference would prove decisive. On December 27, 1942, the skies above New Guinea bore witness to a clash that would echo across the Pacific. 12 brand-new P-38 Lightnings of the 39th Fighter Squadron lifted off from Port Moresby, climbing into the humid air. For many of their pilots, this was the first time the Lightning would be tested in large-scale combat. Waiting for them was a formation of more than 40 Japanese aircraft: A6M Zeros, Kai-43 Oscars, and Val dive bombers, moving to strike Allied positions. Until this moment, Japanese pilots had grown accustomed to superiority. They believed that once a dogfight began, the Zero's nimble turns and tight loops would decide the outcome. But what happened that day overturned everything they thought they knew. The P-38s did not circle to engage in close combat. Instead, they stayed high, then dove like hawks from the sun. At speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour, the twin-boom fighters unleashed concentrated streams of fire from their nose-mounted cannon and machine guns. A Val exploded in flames. An Oscar crumpled under heavy fire. In the chaos, a young lieutenant named Richard Bong scored his first victories, while squadron leader Captain Thomas Lynch added another kill to his tally. Japanese pilots tried to wheel their aircraft into tight turns, expecting the Americans to follow. But the Lightnings never took the bait. They pulled up sharply, climbing back to altitude before diving again. The Zero, so deadly in horizontal combat, was helpless against this vertical style of warfare. When the smoke cleared, more than a dozen Japanese aircraft had been destroyed. Not a single Lightning was lost. For the first time, Japan's airmen realized they were facing a new kind of opponent: faster, tougher, and willing to fight on their own terms. The age of unchallenged Zero dominance was over. The arrival of the P-38 Lightning forced a complete rethinking of air combat in the Pacific. For over a year, Japanese pilots had thrived in horizontal maneuvering battles. Their Zero could outturn almost any Allied fighter, and training emphasized circling duels where patience and agility brought victory. But against the Lightning, these tactics collapsed. The P-38's pilots were trained to reject the instinct to turn with the enemy. Instead, they embraced vertical maneuvering. Altitude became life insurance. From high above, Lightnings would dive at blistering speed, fire their concentrated nose-mounted guns, then climb back out of reach before a Zero could respond. This method, known as boom and zoom, transformed the battlefield into a three-dimensional contest where speed and altitude, not turn radius, determined survival. Japanese fighters, limited by fragile structures and low dive speeds, simply could not follow. Attempts to chase Lightnings often ended with aircraft shuddering on the edge of structural failure. Climbing after them led to stalls. Disengagement was impossible once the P-38 chose to press the attack. For the first time, American pilots held the initiative. The Lightning had not only neutralized the Zero's greatest advantage, it had rewritten the rules of air combat in the Pacific. The P-38 Lightning did more than introduce a new machine. It created legends in the skies of the Pacific. Among them was Richard Bong, a farm boy from Wisconsin whose calm precision and deadly accuracy made him America's top ace. Flying only the Lightning, Bong mastered deflection shooting and vertical tactics, often destroying enemy aircraft with astonishingly few rounds. By war's end, his record of 40 confirmed victories stood unmatched. Alongside him rose Thomas Maguire, a fierce tactician whose aggressive style and innovation left a lasting mark. Maguire authored manuals on P-38 combat, teaching younger pilots how to exploit the aircraft's speed, climb, and firepower. His techniques, including high-speed rolls and vertical reversals, became doctrine across the 5th Air Force. He finished the war with 38 confirmed kills, second only to Bong. Other names added to the Lightning's reputation: Charles McDonald, Jay Robbins, and Gerald Johnson, each building tallies of victories while refining the art of vertical warfare. Together, they proved that disciplined tactics and advanced technology could turn ordinary men into aces feared across the Pacific. For the Japanese, these pilots became symbols of a new reality. The twin-boomed Lightning, in the hands of experts, was nearly unstoppable. On April 18, 1943, the P-38 Lightning proved its worth in one of the war's most daring operations. American codebreakers had intercepted the travel schedule of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor. His inspection flight over the Solomon Islands offered a rare opportunity. The mission required a long-range interception, over 400 miles of open ocean, a task only the Lightning could achieve with drop tanks and advanced navigation. 16 P-38s of the 339th Fighter Squadron took off from Guadalcanal, flying at wave-top height to evade radar. After more than 2 hours, they reached the exact intercept point at the precise moment. In the ensuing clash, Yamamoto's bomber was shot down, killing Japan's most brilliant naval strategist. The psychological effect was immense. If the Americans could strike with such reach and precision, nowhere in the Pacific was safe. The mission marked a turning point in the air war, proving the P-38's strategic value. After proving itself in New Guinea, the P-38 Lightning became the spearhead of Allied air power across the Pacific. Its long range and heavy firepower made it indispensable for escorting bombers, sweeping enemy airfields, and hunting supply convoys. By the time American forces advanced into the Philippines in late 1944, Lightnings roamed the skies almost unopposed. Japanese pilots, once confident in the Zero, now faced an enemy they could neither outrun nor outgun. The P-38 had transformed the balance of air power, ensuring Allied control of the skies from island to island on the road to Japan. The P-38's success was not only about design, it was also about America's vast industrial and training advantage. While Japan struggled to replace lost aircraft and pilots, U.S. factories produced Lightnings in the thousands. each one rolling out with upgrades based on combat experience. At the same time, a steady stream of well-trained pilots entered the front lines, backed by rigorous stateside programs that emphasize gunnery, formation flying, and tactical discipline. This combination of mass production and professional training meant that every P-38 lost could be replaced, and every new pilot arrived ready to fight and survive. By the war's end, the P-38 Lightning had written its name into history. It was the only American fighter to remain in production throughout World War II, serving from Pearl Harbor to victory in the Pacific. It carried aces like Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire to immortality, struck down Admiral Yamamoto, and gave the Allies unmatched range and striking power. More than just a machine, the Lightning symbolized America's ability to innovate, adapt, and overwhelm its enemies through skill and industry. Its twin booms and sharp nose became icons of victory and a reminder that technology can change the course of war.